Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're going to be diving into a paper, and it's all about optimizing how we train large language models.
Okay.
As these models become more and more powerful, we're talking like Llama 3 or GPT-4,
Right.
they require a massive amount of resources to train, time, energy, you name it.
Yeah, absolutely.
This paper explores a potential solution,
Yeah.
quantized training with a 4-bit floating point format, or FP4. It's,
Mm-hmm.
it's a really uncharted territory, but the potential payoff is huge.
Yeah.
We could potentially double training speeds compared to FP8, which is already faster than traditional methods.
Wow.
The question is, can we achieve this speed without sacrificing accuracy?
Right.
That's what deep dive is all about.
So the paper starts off by highlighting just how resource-intensive training these large language models is.
Yeah.
They mention the example of Llama 3, which required 16,000 H100 GPUs running for nearly 2 months.
Wow.
Quantization offers a path to efficiency.
Uh-uh.
The idea is to represent numbers in the model's computations using fewer bits. It's like compressing a file. You use less space without losing the essential information.
I see.
FP4 takes this concept to the extreme using a mere 4 bits.
That's a tiny amount of information to work with.
It is.
The paper specifically calls out the challenges of FP4's limited dynamic range.
Right.
Can you break down what that means and why it matters?
Well, think of dynamic range as the spectrum of values a number format can represent.
Okay.
FP4, with its 4 bits, can only represent 16 distinct values. This severely limits its ability to handle both very small and very large numbers.
Yeah.
It's like trying to capture the nuances of a symphony using only a few basic notes.
I see.
You're bound to lose detail, and in the case of LLM training, that loss of detail can translate to reduced accuracy.
And the paper provides some pretty stark evidence of this, right?
They do.
They show what happens when you try to train a model using straight FP4.
Figure 1 in the paper paints a clear picture.
Okay.
Directly converting a model to FP4 causes the training to essentially fall apart. The loss curve, which measures how well the model is learning, skyrockets compared to the baseline. That's why this research is so compelling.
Yeah.
They're not just proposing FP4, they've developed an entire framework to make it work.
So let's get into the framework itself.
Okay.
It seems to center on general matrix multiplication, or JMM, the most computationally demanding part of LLM training.
Yeah, the framework addresses the quantization of both weights and activations, 2 key components of neural networks.
Right.
Each presents its own set of challenges in the FP4 world.
Okay.
For weights, they introduce a new technique called a differentiable gradient estimator, or DGE.
What's the problem DGE is solving?
During training, models learn by adjusting their weights based on errors.
Okay.
This process, called backpropagation, requires calculating gradients which tell the model how to adjust those weights. Traditional methods for handling quantization during backpropagation,
Yeah.
like the straight-through estimator, don't work well with low-bit formats like FP4. They introduce inaccuracies that can hinder the model's learning process.
So DGE is all about improving the precision of these gradient calculations in the FP4 setting.
It maintains the efficiency of hard quantization for the initial computations,
Okay.
but introduces a correction term during backpropagation to refine the gradients.
I see.
This helps ensure the model learns effectively despite the limited precision of FP4.
Okay, that's weights.
Yeah.
What about activations?
Well,
What makes them tricky to quantize?
activations, unlike weights, are highly dynamic. They tend to have outliers values significantly larger than the rest.
Okay.
These outliers disrupt the quantization process by forcing the dynamic range to expand, which can cause other important values to essentially disappear.
Nice.
It's like trying to take a group photo where one person is miles away.
Okay.
You have to zoom out so far that everyone else becomes a blur.
So how do they prevent these outliers from ruining the whole picture?
Their solution is called outlier clamping and compensation, or OCC. They clamp or limit those outlier values to a predefined threshold,
I see.
preventing them from distorting the quantization. But they don't just discard the information those outliers represent.
Right.
They create a sparse matrix to compensate for the clamping, preserving the overall structure of the data.
And they have some pretty compelling visuals to show this in action.
They do. Figure 4 in the paper shows how OCC preserves the structure of an activation tensor after quantization.
Okay.
The quantized version using OCC closely resembles the original, while the version without OCC loses a lot of crucial detail.
Okay.
It's like comparing a photo taken with a good camera to one taken with a blurry lens.
Do they provide any quantitative evidence that this OCC technique actually works?
They do. Table 1 shows a significant improvement in several metrics that measure the similarity between the original and quantized tensors when using OCC. This provides further confirmation that OCC effectively mitigates the negative impact of outliers.
This is all starting to sound quite promising. Let's move on to the actual experimental results and see how this FP4 framework performs in practice.
Okay. They train various llama models ranging from 1.3 billion to 13 billion parameters, using both their FP4 framework and the standard BF16 mixed precision training as a baseline.
Right.
They trained these models from scratch on a massive data set of 100 billion tokens.
And what did they find? Did FP4 live up to its promise?
The results are quite compelling.
Yeah.
Figure 5 in the paper shows the training loss curves for both FP4 and BF16. The FP4 curves closely track the BF16 curves across all model sizes, indicating that the framework is effectively minimizing accuracy loss.
So they also share specific loss values after training, right?
Yes.
For the 1.3 billion parameter model, the loss with FP4 was 2.55.
Right.
Compared to 2.49 with BF16, that's a negligible difference.
Yeah.
So they didn't stop at training loss.
So they didn't.
They also evaluated the models on a range of downstream tasks, using a zero-shot approach, meaning the models were tested on tasks they hadn't seen during training.
Yeah, that's a true test of a model's ability to generalize.
Exactly. How did the FP4 models perform?
Table 2 shows the results. The FP4 models achieved competitive accuracy on these diverse tasks, even slightly surpassing the BF16 models in some cases.
That's impressive.
It is.
It suggests that FP4 within this framework isn't just about efficiency. It might even lead to performance gains.
To really understand the contribution of each component, they conducted a series of ablation studies. They systematically removed different parts of the framework and observed the impact on performance.
What did these ablation studies reveal?
Well, it confirmed the importance of both the DGE for weights and OCC for activations. Removing either component significantly degraded performance.
So both techniques are essential for achieving stable and accurate FP4 training.
Yes.
What else did they learn?
They found that fine-grained vector-wise quantization was crucial for FP4. This contrasts with the coarser-grained approaches often used with FP8.
I see.
It highlights how sensitive FP4 is to quantization choices.
Before we wrap up, let's take a step back and look at how this research fits into the broader landscape of quantization techniques.
Sure. The authors provide a comprehensive overview of existing research in this area, covering both fully quantized training and techniques like post-training quantization and quantization-aware training.
And how does their approach compare to these existing methods?
Well, previous work has primarily focused on convolutional neural networks or deep neural networks. More recent studies have explored low-bit mixed precision training for LLMs, particularly with FP8, but haven't achieved the efficiency gains of this new framework.
What about 4-bit quantization specifically? Has that been explored before?
There have been successful applications of 4-bit quantization for making LLM inference more efficient. But those methods often require additional steps like calibration, compensation techniques, or even retraining, making them less suitable for the training process itself.
So this research really pushes the boundaries of what's possible with low-bit quantization for training LLMs.
It does. Their goal was to accelerate the training process while maintaining accuracy. Not just improve inference efficiency, which is a significant advancement.
There's also a section discussing differentiable quantization. Can you explain what that is and how it relates to their work?
Differentiable quantization tries to make the quantization process itself differentiable, so it can be seamlessly integrated into the backpropagation process. Traditional methods like STE, as we discussed, struggle with low-bit settings.
And how is their DGE method different?
It utilizes a fixed quantization function and a clever correction term to improve gradient calculations.
I see.
This makes it more efficient and suitable for hardware acceleration, especially for large-scale training.
The paper also dives into the challenges of handling outliers, which we discussed earlier. How does their approach compare to existing methods for dealing with outliers?
Existing methods for outlier handling mostly focus on model inference and rely on channel-wise quantization, which doesn't work well with matrix multiplication in linear layers.
I see.
Some techniques involve pre-processing or using rotary matrices,
Hmm.
but those aren't ideal for pre-training tasks.
And their OCC method is different because...
It handles outliers dynamically during training without needing separate calibration datasets,
Okay.
which is key for maintaining efficiency when pre-training large models with constant data flow.
That's quite an impressive set of innovations. It sounds like this research makes a strong case for the viability of FP4 training for large language models, but are there any limitations?
Oh, they point out that the research is limited by the lack of dedicated FP4 hardware.
Hmm.
Currently, they rely on simulations using FP8 tensor cores.
Okay.
This introduces computational overhead and doesn't fully capture the potential speed and energy efficiency gains of true FP4 support.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
It's still early days for FP4 hardware.
right.
Are there any other limitations?
They mentioned that they haven't yet scaled their experiments to extremely large models or data sets due to resource constraints,
Right.
which is understandable given the computational demands involved.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
So despite these limitations, their work is a significant contribution to the field.
I think so.
Their framework effectively addresses the challenges of limited dynamic range and low precision,
Yeah.
achieving comparable performance to higher precision baselines.
Mm-hmm.
It's exciting to consider what this could mean for the future of large language model training.
It is.
Their work paves the way for faster, more efficient, and potentially more accessible training of these powerful models.
Absolutely. And it'll be fascinating to watch as hardware capabilities catch up.
So that concludes our deep dive into this paper exploring FP4 quantization for large language model training.
Okay.
We've covered a lot of ground from the challenges of low-bit quantization to the innovative solutions presented in this framework. We hope this deep dive has given you a deeper understanding of this groundbreaking research
Yeah,
and its potential to shape the future of AI.
absolutely.
Thanks for joining us, and until next time, keep exploring.